the camera. Give it off, down.
Give it. Hello, everyone. I'm Alex Navarro, and welcome to Here's What You Missed on Screen.com. This is where we go out of our way to compress everything you need to know about a subject you're either too young, too old, or maybe just a little too lazy to learn about yourself into freshly squozen video edutainment. You give us a few minutes, and we'll learn you real good on a classic franchise, a director's filmography, a TV show's entire run, or whatever else sounds like a good idea at the time we're writing this junk. On this, our debut episode, we'll be diving into the blood-soaked and sleep-deprived world of the Nightmare on Elm Street film franchise. Just released at theaters is the brand new Michael Bay-produced Nightmare on Elm Street remake starring Jackie Earle Haley of Watchmen and Little Children fame as the legendary Stuff of Nightmares Freddy Krueger. This remake comes more than 25 years after the original film, and with that in mind, we realize that a lot of modern horror fans may not quite be old enough to have experienced these classic horror flicks in their era. We're here to help you sound like an expert on all things Nightmare on Elm Street, so the next time you and your coworkers are shooting the breeze at the water cooler and the subject transitions to classic horror, you'll be able to drop knowledge like nobody's business. Of course, when you think Nightmare on Elm Street, you think of Freddy Krueger, the revered serial murderer of children's minds whose filthy clothes, burned skin, and iconic bladed gloves stand out in the hallowed lexicon of movie monsters.
Welcome to my nightmare.
Freddy's played with increasing levels of cheeky menace throughout the series by actor Robert Englund, who got the part after Craven realized he actually kind of needed Freddy to speak, and that casting a stuntman, as was often done for horror films of this era, really wasn't going to cut it. Englund put his stamp on Freddy as a one-liner delivering ghoul with a specific fondness for the word bitch.
Bon appetit. Come, food. This, bitch.
Though Englund went on to appear in some other schlocky horror flicks and TV shows, Freddy proved to be his greatest success, and unlike many actors who try to avoid being associated with specific characters or films, Englund seemed to kind of revel in the opportunity to play Freddy again and again. And up until 2010's remake, he never skipped a movie, show, or music video featuring the character. The original Nightmare on Elm Street film followed a familiar formula. A group of teenage friends are stalked by a menacing monster who systematically kills them off over the course of a 90-minute runtime in increasingly bloody ways. Actress Heather Langenkamp stars as the primary teenager Nancy, who finds herself haunted by bizarre nightmares along her various teenage caricature friends, including one highly familiar face in Johnny Depp, who makes his film debut in this movie as Nancy's boyfriend. Everyone's got to start somewhere, right?
I won't screw up.
Anyway, it quickly becomes apparent that the kids of Elm Street are having the same dreams, featuring the same sinister character. Things go pear-shaped when one fateful sex-filled night, Nancy's best friend Tina is brutally murdered by an unseen gravity-defying force that cuts her to bits. The local clueless constabulary, which just happens to be headed up by Nancy's father, blames Tina's scuzzy greaser boyfriend, though Nancy suspects a more malevolent force.
I don't know who he is, but he's burned. And he wears a weird hat.
Her feelings seem justified when her nightmares intensify and the boyfriend finds himself involuntarily strung up in his jail cell. Around this time, the movie goes into exposition overdrive, with Nancy discovering by way of her sauced-up mother that she, alongside with a mob of other Elm Street parents, murdered a local child killer named Fred Krueger some years prior. When he got off on a technicality, the parents went vigilante and burned him alive in a boiler room. Hence why so many of the kids' nightmares take place in, dun-da-da-da, a boiler room. Nancy, of course, sets off to stop him, but not before her dreamboat boyfriend gets it in one of the fastest, yet still most hilarious death scenes in the entire series. The final confrontation with Freddy proves a little bit lackluster, with Nancy primarily wandering around in various dream states and not really getting anywhere while trying to take Freddy down, until she discovers that by not being afraid of him anymore, she can just kind of make him disappear. Fortunately, there is at least the bonus of the twist ending, which Craven himself apparently kind of hated, but producer Robert Shea really insisted upon it. Watching that mannequin get pulled to that window always kills me. With a bona fide hit on their hands, New Line quickly cobbled together a lackluster sequel in 1985's Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. Craven's name is nowhere to be found on this one outside of a character's credit on the script, but the movie mostly hits the same tone right from the get-go, especially with this bizarre nightmare set on a school bus. The story itself revolves around a teenage boy named Jesse, who is played by an actor that looks sort of like a wimpier version of the guy from Caddyshack. He moves into Nancy's old house in Springwood, and shocker, he starts having nightmares. However, these nightmares seem a little less geared toward Freddy killing him and more toward Freddy using him. Evidently, the only way Freddy can get to the kids in this movie, and only in this movie, is by inhabiting Jesse's body. In one of the weirder death scenes of the series, Freddy takes over for the first time and murders not a local teenager, but Jesse's bondage club-loving gym coach. Things get explicitly grosser, and Jesse's girlish screams get progressively more hysterical as Freddy starts to take over more and more, eventually culminating in a smorgasbord of dead teenagers at a pool party, followed by a lot of screechy whining from Jesse's would-be girlfriend, who spends the entire movie pining after him, even when it becomes abundantly clear that he's frequently killing people.
Jesse!
That is love right there, folks. Eventually, Freddy is once again defeated, this time by the power of love, and everything seems like it's gonna be okay.
It's okay. It's all over.
The events of Freddy's Revenge are all but disregarded in 1987's Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, which saw Craven return as a co-writer of the script, along with Frank Darabont. Yes, the same Frank Darabont who went on to direct the Oscar-contending likes of The Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile. Again, everyone's got to start somewhere. Here, Heather Langenkamp returns to play Nancy Thompson as a grown-up grad student whose studies in the psychology of dreams bring her back to her hometown of Springwood to take care of a mental hospital full of harried teenagers that find themselves tortured by similar nightmares.
Also, because I'm going through some very strange shit.
Your dreams.
The movie spends an exorbitant amount of time setting up the cartoonish personalities of these kids. There's the nerdy D&D master, the moody former junkie, the wannabe TV
As
star.
soon as I get out of here, I'm going to Los Angeles to be an actress. I'm gonna be on TV.
Yeah, lifestyle of the rich and psychotic.
The angry black kid, and the kid so traumatized he can't even speak. Though he sure is good at drawing teardrops on his face. In another instance of a future star making their film debut in a nightmare flick, Patricia Arquette stars as Kristen, a girl who has the ability to psychically drag other people into her dreams. And don't look now, but that's Larry Fishburne in an early role as an orderly at the hospital.
Oh, right. You're gonna be a TV star.
Nancy initially bumps up against a Bill Maher-looking psychologist, but quickly turns him into a believer after kids at the hospital start dying in increasingly creative ways, including this little gem that manages to get both Dick Cavett and Zsa Zsa Gabor into the mix.
Certainly.
Is that what you think?
Dream Warriors is, frankly, more noteworthy for its way too excellent theme song performed by hair metal stalwarts Dawkins. The acting is more or less terrible across the board, and the story becomes increasingly ridiculous when a ghostly nun starts appearing to the psychologist just long enough to explain exactly what to do to kill Freddy for good.
You must find the remains and bury him in hallowed ground.
But it gets by with a lot of unintentional humor, such as when the kids discover their special powers they gain in the dream world. Watching this hilariously mohawk girl and the Wizard Master get shanked by Freddy is nothing short of delightful.
Demon, be gone!
And when Nancy sacrifices herself and the psychologist finally sends Freddy's bones to hallowed ground, Dream Warriors provides the closest thing to a reasonable conclusion you'll find anywhere in the franchise, and with a minor twist to boot.
My God. You were his mother.
That conclusion is, of course, trampled upon entirely in 1988's Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, a sequel brought to you, the viewer, courtesy of director Renny Harlin, perhaps best known as the director of Die Hard 2, Die Harder, but also the brains behind such Gina Davis-fronted fare as The Long Kiss Goodnight and one of the biggest box office bombs of all time, Cutthroat Island. However, Harlan did strike gold with this one, as Dream Master is the highest-grossing film in the franchise's history, despite being cringe-inducingly terrible from beginning to end. Harlan seems hell-bent on jumping the shark as thoroughly as possible here, setting up a cast of rote, annoying 80s teenage stereotypes, including the requisite jock, the nerd, the quiet girl, the slutty workout queen, and the karate-obsessed cool guy, who gets this unbelievable training montage set to Dramarama. The movie also features the 3 surviving Dream Warriors from the last movie, and then proceeds to kill them off all within the first 30 minutes of screen time, though not before establishing Patricia Arquette's Kristen character with an entirely different, entirely angstier actress that you've never heard of then, and haven't heard from since. Kristen, in her nightmarish death throes, transmits her dream-pulling power to a random friend of hers named Alice, who just happens to have a penchant for daydreaming. This proves remarkably dangerous when her daydreams become a way for Freddy to get to her friends anytime she starts to nod off. Nothing much of note really happens in The Dream Master. The movie is surprisingly light on memorable death scenes, though the girl's inexplicable karate fight with Freddy, which is preceded by yet another amazing preparation montage, does end with a little bit of enjoyable grossness, if you're into that sort of thing. Perhaps given the insane success of all things Freddy at this point in history, New Line in 1988 also hastily launched the syndicated television series Freddy's Nightmares. It's a sort of half-assed crossbreed between Tales from the Crypt and The Twilight Zone, featuring Freddy as a bookending narrator who briefly sets up each gruesome standalone tale and periodically shows up to deliver an absolutely terrible one-liner.
Yeah, that's the trouble with government. You can get buried in paper.
Despite horrific acting, practically non-existent comedy, and production values that range somewhere between a modestly budgeted haunted house and Troll 2, Freddy's Nightmares existed for 2 whole seasons and 44 episodes of horrific mediocrity. The Freddy Krueger murder train continued to chug along in 1989 with Nightmare on Elm Street 5: The Dream Child. Alice returns only to find herself knocked up by her soon-to-be deceased boyfriend, and Freddy immediately starts using the baby's dreams to tunnel his way back into the minds of local teenagers to kill once again. Hence the subtitle, Dream Child.
What's that?
Apart from the uniformly terrible acting,
Mark, give it up. It's hopeless.
its preponderance with it using an absolutely gross Freddy baby puppet, and a few patently disgusting teenager deaths, Dream Child is easily the most forgettable film in the series, though the death of this comic book nerd character does have its merits.
Bad for you.
Anything but forgettable is 1991's Hamfest Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare. As with any horror flick that purports to be the last of its kind, this is far from the true end for Freddy,
My score.
though it is the last of the proper sequels. Here we find a teenage boy who has lost his memory, and that finds his way into a shelter for troubled teens. He's got no idea who he is. His only clue to his origin is a newspaper article from the town of Springwood. There's also a psychologist who, in a twist that telegraphs itself way early on, turns out to be the daughter of Freddy Krueger.
You can't be my father.
The boy, the psychologist, and a few wayward kids from the center, including a very young, very stoned-looking Breckin Meyer, end up going to Springwood, which, ravaged by Freddy's previous murderous rampages, is now entirely childless and entirely crazy. Their appearance promptly sends Freddy into another spree of psychic murder, including the funniest, stupidest, most Nintendo-referenced death you'll find anywhere in the franchise.
All right. Super Spencer!
Great graphics.
Apart from that absurdity, as well as its bizarro cast, including Airwolf and Homicide alum Yaphet Kotto, a what-the-fuck appearance from then-married couple Roseanne and Tom Arnold,
You know they bring him!
and this random callback cameo from Johnny Depp,
This is your brain.
Freddy's Dead is probably most noteworthy for its wholehearted effort to turn Freddy into a demented version of Bugs Bunny. Every kill in this movie has a distinct stamp of a Warner Brothers cartoon gone bloodthirsty. The movie is also infamous for being the first, and hopefully last, in the series to go 3D. It was only for the last 20 or so minutes of the movie, which also includes copious amounts of recollection about Freddy's past. And unless you own the original Laserdisc print of this thing, you'll never, ever actually get to see it in 3D. Still, the end battle with Freddy isn't a total waste. And hey, there's even a titular line.
Freddy's dead.
After a 4-year break, New Line decided it just could not let Freddy rest in peace. In 1995, Wes Craven returned to write and helm New Nightmare, a thoroughly fourth wall-breaking piece of weirdness that featured Robert Englund and Heather Langenkamp returning to play, well, themselves. Heather's now a successful TV actress, which is sort of half true, but the big wigs at New Line want a new Freddy movie. Series producer Robert Shea says as much.
I guess evil never dies, right? Anyhow, a few weeks...
Heather's also getting bizarre phone calls from someone pretending to be Freddy. But is he pretending?
Freddy's coming for you!
Earthquakes are ravaging Southern California. Her husband mysteriously dies mid-REM song.
Religion.
Her son starts having horrible nightmares. Wes Craven, who apparently owns the longest swimming pool in human history, has a convoluted theory about what's going on.
Like the genie in the bottle.
Exactly.
It's an interesting little premise that, apart from this one nifty little callback scene to Tina's death in the original film, is sadly light on the things that make Nightmare on Elm Street fun. Freddy loses most of the one-liners, and instead he's decked out in a gothy trench coat and combat boots and supposed to be more evil or something. Also, if you're gonna put all these horror movie bigwigs in the film playing themselves, why not have Meta Freddy kill them off? Was it really too much to ask to have a scene where Robert Englund and Freddy meet face to face, before Englund is killed, like brutally? I don't know, maybe he thought it would hurt his career or something. All those memorable roles in movies like The Mangler and Zombie Strippers.
Make them remember me, Jason. Make them remember what fear tastes like!
Robert Englund's last turn as the bladed and burned one turned out to be 2003's Freddy vs. Jason. Indeed, by this time, Freddy's legend had degenerated to the point where producers felt they had to pander to the masses by putting the legendary maniac into gladiatorial combat against the Friday the 13th series hockey-masked murder junkie, Jason Voorhees. Freddy vs. Jason was directed by Hong Kong veteran Ronnie Yu and featured an almost aggressively lackluster cast, including John Ritter's son.
I thought you might be in trouble, so...
The other girl you might sort of recognize from Destiny's Child and all-around horrible actress Kelly Rowland.
Killed Trey, killed his dad, and then took his own life.
And a face Giant Bomb users are sure to recognize from The Wonderful World of Tang and Resident Evil Apocalypse and Postal star Zach Ward. The film is loosely wrapped in a plot about Freddy manipulating Jason into killing the kids of Elm Street to inspire their fear and bring him back to full power. Apparently, the citizens of Springwood made a pact years ago to erase all memory of Freddy, and he's mighty pissed about it.
Well, I will be soon enough.
Of course, none of that matters a lick, because the whole purpose of this film is to set these two against one another and provide yet another excuse for both of these psychos to go kill crazy on a fresh crop of blade fodder. Though Jason gets most of the early highlight kills, Freddy comes back with a couple of good ones of his own. And the film is incredibly efficient about making sure scarcely a few minutes can go by without someone getting impaled. Also, unlike other Hollywood versus films, Freddy vs. Jason spends a shocking amount of time actually letting these two beat the living shit out of each other. The fights are lengthy, memorable, and the ending is properly poetic. So with all these movies available to you, and there are a lot, which are the ones to see? The original Nightmare probably holds up the best at this point, and it's a good way to prime yourself for the remake, though you probably don't actually want to do that because it's not very good. It's not very good.
You forgot where you came from, kid.
Dream Warriors holds the distinction of providing the most laughs per minute and is far more watchable than many of the other unintentionally funny installments in the series. And truth be told, I think you kind of have to check out Freddy vs. Jason. It does what it does shockingly well, and it has enough nod and a wink references to early installments in both franchises to make a true fan giggle with glee. And that about sums up the history of one of Hollywood's longest-standing and longest-suffering horror franchises. Hopefully this is up to your Nightmare IQ a point or two, and you can profess yourself as something of an expert on all things Freddy. Thanks for watching, and remember...
Whatever you do, don't fall asleep.